That's the Fleshtones rocking Hamilton, Ontario just a few weeks ago. The band has been playing and recording non-stop pretty much since they formed in Queens back in 1976. Their new album, It's Getting Late, and More Songs About Werewolves, has just been released, and so we caught up with frontman Peter Zaremba, who was home in Brooklyn, to talk about the new record and reminisce a bit about the time I first saw them performing in Rochester, New York at the Masonic Temple back in 1985 along with the Chesterfield Kings.
I don't remember anything about the show. I remember hanging out in the kitchen of the Masonic Hall, and it was very brightly lit with fluorescent light. And there was like some meat slicers and I don't know. I think somebody had made a big thing of kielbasi or something. Yeah, right. Some pierogi.
It brings out the Polish in me.
There you go. So how do you like New Zealand?
I love it. Well, I moved here 30 years ago and never regretted it.
Okay. Well, I tell you, it's good that you don't regret it, because once you get there, it's hard to get out. Far, right?
It is a long distance drive. Yeah, it's like 17-hour flight back to New York. So there you
go. The band almost played New Zealand once.
Right.
And when we were signed to Trafalgar Records, and we were doing a tour of Australia, and they said, well, why don't you toss in a few dates in New Zealand while you're at it? But already the tour was almost a month long.
Right.
And so a few of us kind of said, nah, come on, the tour's too long. We'll play New Zealand the next time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're standing by.
I hope so. I hope so. So fire away.
All right. Well, first of all, since you talk about the past and whatever, since we are similar, I think I'm 69 years old. I think you're 70, if I'm not mistaken.
You're a kid. You're a mere child.
Yeah, but
I just turned 70.
Keith is the same age as I am. But so yes. I got to ask, what keeps you going? Because you've been doing this since forever. And is it love of the thing, or is it do you need to be out there? What is it that? Because if someone were to tell you in 1976 that you're going to be doing this at age 70, you'd have been skeptical at best, I'm guessing.
And in about 1979 or so, I implanted chips, and all of some people wonder if they're zombies, but no. If you ever saw the movie Astro Zombies,
right?
It's much more scientific.
Yeah.
So it's a chip implants in all of them, and they have no say in the matter.
Excellent.
Actually, at this point, the truth is, we really enjoy what we do. We seriously do. None of us really had any illusions or desires about like the whole rock star thing. That wasn't an attraction. Mm-hmm. So, we liked the music, and we were fans of music, and we wanted to create music that sounded like stuff we wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Or as close to that as possible that we were able to do. And that's what we've been doing. You get involved with it for like limousines or money, a lot of money or stuff. You're bound to get disillusioned pretty quick.
Right. Yep.
So we never had that opportunity.
Well, that's the thing. The big difference I found between the States and New Zealand. Nobody has any illusions of making any money in New Zealand, and they never have. So they seem to be in it for the right reasons. Whereas I knew lots of bands back in the day who were there to be the next Guns N' Roses or whatever, and it didn't quite work out for them.
Yeah. We keep thinking of things we want to do.
Right.
Since we really enjoy playing in front of people. It's a shame that folks in New Zealand, I don't know if they'll ever get that chance. Maybe if there's some kind of huge festival that hires people or whatever. But we really enjoy playing in front of people, and we get a lot of love back. Yeah, really. It sounds corny, but it's true.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, we keep thinking up new songs.
Yes.
Which is another thing. And Keith has said it many times. He goes, the difference between us and a lot of other bands is that we're constantly thinking up new stuff. And, we're not like out playing, the whole Roman Gods album. I mean, we play a couple of tunes from Roman Gods, but because we still think it's a pretty valid record.
Yep.
But you know what I'm saying? Like we always got a few new tricks up our sleeves.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it keeps it, keeps it a lot of fun.
And that brings us to the new album. It's getting late. What kind of tricks are up your sleeve on this one?
Yeah, it speaks for itself. That seemed like to me, as we were working on it, seemed like the obvious title.
Yeah.
It just did. And then a song appeared. Keith had a very nice melody, and it suggested that a somewhat poignant tune. But to keep it from getting too glum, we did add and more songs about werewolves.
Yes.
To keep that,
of course.
Keep that theme going. So we came up with a werewolf tune. I'm always inspired by Eddie Angel of Los Straitjackets,
right.
who also is in the Neanderthals and a few other bands, and he at this point he must have a dozen werewolf tunes.
Oh, okay. I have to check on that.
Yeah.
So a friend of mine, Greg, plays in Los Straitjackets. Do you know Greg Townsend?
Oh, sure. He's from Rochester.
Yes, indeed. So there you go.
Right, back in Rochester.
We're old buddies from way back.
Okay. Well, when we were all going to be on the big Underground Garage cruise.
I saw that thing. It was awesome.
It's insane. I have no idea how. How they're even going to pay all these bands.
Yeah.
I think someone's going to get off the boat early, but all of a sudden the promoters will disappear. Hey, wait a minute, that's my boss. But anyhow, Greg will be on board for that.
That'll be great.
And so will the Neanderthals. So you could look up Werewolf from Outer Space.
Yeah,
that's my favorite of all of Eddie's werewolf tunes.
It all started about a month ago when a spaceship crashed down in Mexico. Now there's been sightings all over the place of the werewolf from outer space.
And speaking of which, your album drew me to just check out something, the Johnny Rivers track that you cover, because I love Johnny Rivers and I have the single, but I always just knew the A side, Where Have All the Flowers Gone, never flipped it around. So how did you discover?
I've always loved Johnny Rivers.
Love Me While You Can.
You say slow down, I'm moving too fast. That kind of loving will never last. But I can't wait because life's too short. You never know when you might be in court. You better love me while you can. Girl, don't put me on. You better love me while you can. Tomorrow I may be gone.
The thing I really always liked about Johnny Rivers was he had his own, I don't know if it was him or a producer or whatever, came up with that Hootenanny live. Like
right.
Not really live, but
yeah. Live at the Whiskey.
Live at the Whiskey or live at the live in Greenwich Village or wherever it was.
Yep.
Live in the studio, for sure. And I always loved that sound. And it was somehow that's always eluded us. We try to get a lot of that on Roman Gods, but the whole concept was anathema to our producer. Right. For that record, and that resulted in lots of conflicts. But if we ever, for some reason, remix that album from the original tapes, it will sound a lot more like a Johnny Rivers record.
There you go. Yep.
Anyway, that's one of many songs fed to us by our friend and biographer, Joe Bonomo.
Right.
Author of Sweat. The book Sweat about the Fleshtones. Yeah. And he's always saying, why don't you guys try this? Why don't you guys try that? And he's fed us a lot of records. So we gave that one a whirl. I think it came out all right.
Yeah, definitely. I was trying to figure out
I
if
think
Johnny Rivers is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because it seems like he should be, but he probably not.
a lot of people that you think should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame are not.
Yeah.
Recently, not fairly recently, a couple of years ago, we were playing in Cleveland at a small club. And who shows up but Nick Knox
Oh, right.
of the Cramps.
Cramps, yeah.
Now, when I had never spoken more than any words to Nick Knox, because when he was in the Cramps, you had to totally buy into the Cramps persona.
Right.
So he was like this,
He's too cool.
silent ghoul, a silent ghoulish type, he wouldn't say hello to anybody or anything. And he shows up at our show in Cleveland, and he's this totally normal, nice guy.
Right.
Yep. Totally personable.
Yep.
He's like, "Hey, Pete, how you doing?" I'm like, "What? You know who I am? You know my name?" I'm shocked. And he goes, "Look, this is the only time we almost got into the Hall of Fame." He said, "I know the people at the Hall of Fame, and tomorrow morning, if we get up early, let's go over there before they open, and I'll show you around the Hall of Fame."
Uh-huh.
One thing led to another. We got up late, and we missed our opportunity to be in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, boy.
And I don't think it'll ever. that was it. One opportunity.
Well, it's a shame. Yeah.
Well, maybe it's better that way.
It could be. I mean, it was nice to see Foreigner get in, I guess, because Lou Graham's from Rochester, so
there's actually a few Foreigner songs I like.
Yeah.
What's that? Rock and Roll Fantasy, is that them?
No, that's the Kinks.
No. You say, it's a part of my rock and roll fan. Yes, it is. That's got to be Foreigner. How's about she put the X in sex? That's Kiss.
Hot Blooded. There's Hot Blooded.
Hot Blooded. Come on, Hot Blooded is great. But one of my favorite lines in any hard rock song. But before we do, you got to get away from you know who. So he's telling it like it was.
Yep. It was definitely like that back then.
Yeah. It was. I'm glad it's not anymore. So anyway, shoot.
Okay, so how did this record start formulating in your mind? When did it become a thing that was you guys were working on? Because it sounds like part of it was done in France somewhere, and
in Perpignan, France. Sometimes, what can I say? A lot of our albums lately, since it was like 4 years, I think, since Face of the Screaming Werewolf.
Right. Yep.
Which is a long time. I mean, in the old days, like most groups would have released 10 albums in that time.
Yes.
And all have become heroin addicts and broken up by now.
Yep.
But we had the pandemic, we had this and that. But then, we started playing around again, and we like to take advantage of, a lot of people say, "Hey, we got a studio. Why don't you come by, try to record a few songs?" And Keith always has that in mind. He really does. He goes, we should start putting together tracks for an album. So we were in Perpignan, France, and the group, the Liminianis. You can look them up. They're really good.
Okay.
And they said, "Why don't you come to our studio? We want to record with you." So we recorded a couple of our own songs. Keith had some stuff. And we also did a song with our friend Tony Truant, who used to be in the French band The Dogs.
Okay.
A really good rock and roll band from the 80s. Uh-huh. He did a French cover of a Kaznitz and Katz song.
Those guys.
The fire department needs a fireman or something like that.
I don't know that one.
Really, it'd be a typical Kaznitz and Katz. Yeah. And we did it in French.
Of course.
And we did Wah Wah Power. Okay. And we did a version of we did a cover of the Astronauts, The Hearse. that type of song, it's a beautiful song. It was written early song by Lee Hazelwood.
Yeah.
You know, when we do something like that, we figured, you know, the Astronauts version is beautiful. It's very bass. What am I going to say? Stripped down? No, it's you know, it's very pure.
Yeah.
It's we said when we figured, well, you know, no one's going to top that. That's definitive. So we wanted to do something with it, sort of like, you know, the Johnny Rivers song. We kind of, you know, let's do something with this. You know, no one needs another version of us trying to sound like Johnny Rivers or sound like the Astronauts, which we couldn't do anyway. So we did Morricone-ized it a bit.
Yeah.
You know, because we like that music too, and that's something we do a lot. You know, we'll combine, you know, the ideas of different genres and streams of music that we love.
Yeah.
You know, so we kind of gave it the Morricone touch a bit.
And you kind of did that with Elton John too, with his Empty Sky. You turned it into the Stones.
Yes,
like Satisfaction almost.
I'm not a rat, the TV spy don't like the big this room. Those balls that look up towards the sun at night look towards the moon. Every day the swallows play in the clouds of love. Make me wish that I had wings, take me high above.
Okay, 1969, the very first time I heard Empty Sky, I said, man, does that sound like the Stones?
Yeah.
You know, because I think that's what they were going for, except, you know, they were getting a little artsy with it, but you know, like it had a very Sympathy for the Devil kind of sound to it. And ever since then, ever since 1969, I had wanted to do a version of Empty Sky more Stones-ified. And we finally did it. And I don't know how successful it is. It's different than Elton. Again, you know, there's no reason to try to do it like Elton.
No, he already did it.
Right, he already did it, and he did it pretty good, pretty good. And I also thought it would be. I think a lot of people say, "What, the Fleshtones playing Elton John?" Yes, we can play Elton John.
Wonder what Elton would think of it. You have to send it off to him.
I think he might like it.
I think he might. Yeah.
You know, but I think he's also probably a perfectionist, and he might get annoyed at our, you know. And you know what though? Speaking of, I was sort of channeling Greg from the Kings a bit with the vocal.
Oh, Greg Prevost,
yes, because my favorite track by them ever is their version of "Are You Going to Be There?"
Right. Yeah.
At the Love-In.
Yeah.
Which I think is, I love that version, and I think his vocal is just does he hit the nail on the head.
I be there when I make my mouth. I be there when I set the spell. And love you, put your hand in the air. I make my own bank out without you right there. I choose the right direction when I'm making my connection in this world.
I was thinking of his vocal actually for this, you know, to get it a little more, you know, more punk in the 60s sense, you know.
Well, there's a version of the Kings that have reformed, but not with Greg, so it's kind of a tenuous.
I know. The last time we were in Rochester, Andy dropped by to see us and was talking about his plans. Bobby's a good guy, so that's I can definitely say that. Yeah, and he'll be on the ship too.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw the lineup.
Marty, you gotta.
I'm thinking about, you know, what the heck? Where else would you want to be?
Yeah, you know, you gotta fly in.
Yep,
I'll be looking for you.
Okay, I'll see what I can do. And one thing I found most satisfying on the record was the harmonica when it came in. I love hearing that. Changes everything. It takes it up a level.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
know you're the
I'm
player.
the
I'm not
harmonica.
trying to suck up or anything, but I'm just saying
No,
that.
no, you've already done that
Okay, that's
by
good.
even interviewing me, so that's okay.
I think if like especially on morphine drip.
Surgeon was working overtime. The pain was starting to blow my mind. IV in a hospital bed. 5 nights and I wished I was dead. Third night, candy stripers meant well. Fourth night, I'm going to hell. Dread, dread, dread. Dread, dread, dread.
You know, I have to keep that in mind because very often it's like Keith goes, "Why don't you put some harmonica on this?" And, and I'll say, "Nah, it doesn't need that." It's just like, I'll always remember Gordon Spaeth, our ex sax player, late sax player, and he was really a good harmonica player, much better than me. And I remember him once dismissively saying, "Harmonica, barely one step above humming and whistling."
So
maybe it is. But yeah, it does add something. So I'll keep that in mind, Marty. Thank you. I'm glad I played there's a little bit of harmonica in the fade of Empty Sky.
Right. Okay.
There's a little bit here and there.
All right. And just before Empty Sky, you get a song called The Consequences, which I think Keith wrote.
He wanted me to play harmonica on that, and again, I was saying, "No, it's just going to clutter it up. It's the song's done."
Right.
I'm a big believer in like, at a certain point, a song is done.
Yep. Put a fork in it. So I think it was. I know Keith wrote it. Was it written about some kind of actual band that was kind of horrible and made an impression?
Maybe, and he was just. He was bothered about, like things like, I think it's something about, filling up his car with gas.
Right.
I was going to tell him, look, nobody on either side of the spectrum really wants to hear about that.
Right.
But it's his song, and it's the same thing with, like, I have to say, with Ken's Way of the World. He really had a vision for that.
Right.
And, I didn't want him waking up in the morning 10 years from now saying, "That's Zaremba fucked up my song."
Time flies when you're falling in love. Time drags when you're donning the gloves. I said, my, it's the way of the world. You think you know just how I feel, but let me pull your coat to the real. I said, my, it's the way of the world.
It's a good change from, like, me and Keith screaming, so it's always good to have Ken Fox song.
Yep. All right. Oh, one guy you worked on, I think, over the years was Steve Albini at some point, and I've seemed to be talking to a lot of people who have had that some kind of relationship with him, and since he's no longer with us, I thought I'd bring him up, and he's one of those characters everybody has a story about or an opinion about.
Okay, we recorded the album Laboratory of Sound with Steve, and not only recorded with him but stayed with him in his house. We did the whole thing. We lived with Steve Albini. He proudly said, "You got to try this as Chicago pizza."
Oh yeah.
When it arrived at the house in an envelope, I was immediately suspicious, being a New Yorker. Well, you're from the East.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know about this. And then he opens it, and it's a round pizza, but they cut it in squares.
All right.
what the hell, right? What the heck?
That ain't right.
Now, say what you will about working with Steve. Towards the end of the sessions, he said something to me really brilliant. It was just him and me listening to a playback of a mix or something down in his studio. And he turned to me and he said, Zaremba, what do the Fleshtones need a producer for anyway? And he was totally serious.
Yeah.
And because we spent the whole time telling him what to do about this and that, we want this, we want that. And it really touched, put a light on in my head. And we never worked with a producer since. Wisdom from Steve Albini.
There you go. Because he hated being called a producer anyway, didn't he?
He hated it, and he saw that in us,
right?
That we didn't, because we're record fans, and we tend to come in with total ideas of what we want a record to sound like.
Yep.
I'd say too much. One of these days, it would be nice to run into like a real producer.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That would just take our raw stuff and have some sort of vision.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And do something with it. But we really had, even when we worked with like Richard Goddard, we were telling him what we wanted.
Yep.
And, it was fun working with Richard. It was great. It was a blast. But we were, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, you could have been the Ramones working with Phil Spector, and
right. And I think
you dodged that bullet.
Yeah, right. How's that? Waking up with a gun to your head?
Okay.
I don't. Phil. Yeah. No good.
No,
okay.
No.
I quite frankly think no good.
Yeah.
The Ramones. What they loved Phil Spector, and they're thinking of 1962 or something, which it wasn't anymore. And the producers, I mean, Richard, to a degree, got into us being so into his old stuff.
Right.
He did.
Yep.
He enjoyed that. But it was still 1985 or whatever it was.
Yeah, and he'd produced the early Blondie stuff as well, didn't he?
He did. Although I have to say, Marty Thau recorded them before that. And
I've got this.
Marty, there you go. Oh, you have it. Okay. Crazy. Beautiful. We could do a whole nother session just talking about Marty.
Oh, really?
I think about almost every day.
Oh, cool.
And he is the one. He really took us under his wing. He took me in particular under his wing because I just loved hanging out with him because I was such a fan of music and stuff. And he knew all the guys in the Brill building.
Yeah.
Took me around. I might have made this up in my brain, but I remember him introducing me to Morris Levy.
Oh, jeez.
One day we're sitting in his office and he looked at me and he goes, "You're a psychedelic count."
All right.
So that's where that came from.
Yeah, could be called worse.
I know. I
like
that. I must say. Anyway, we could do a whole session on that. One thing that did occur to me when we were talking about producers and stuff, there's a real divide between what we sound like live and on record,
right? Because
of us being such fans of records, and because a lot of what happens when we play live is not going to translate to a record anyway. The visuals, like what we're doing. We do a lot of stuff.
Yep.
A lot of stuff happens when we play live, and that's not going to wind up on a record.
Yeah.
So, those are the two reasons. They're two separate things almost.
Yeah, I think I was watching a clip just from fairly recently, and Ken's out in the middle of the crowd singing his song, with a microphone and all people all
Yeah,
around him.
yeah.
You're
We
going
don't
on
have
about
that.
the Wheel of Talent, and it's a beautiful thing.
Oh yes, the wheel. One of these days, huh? Maybe the Wheel of Talent will make it to Auckland.
That would be
I
cool.
don't know. That would be very cool.
Yeah.
I'd love that. My dad was in the Merchant Marine. He signed up when he was. It was during World War II, and none of the other services would take him because he was like 14 years old.
Right.
Literally. But the merchant service said, yeah, sure, we'll take you.
Yeah.
But he wound up going to Australia. He wound up going to New Zealand. He wound up going all around the world. He even brought back records from Australia, like when they were into the trad jazz thing.
Oh, right.
In the early 50s, late 40s. A record called The Lizard.
Ooh, okay.
On Regal Parlophone.
I have to look for that.
The Lizard. It was by the Australian. I forget the guy's. I used to know it off the top of my head,
right.
But he was like the big, jazz trad, but like traditional trad.
Yep.
So anyway, a question.
Yes.
Marty.
Okay. Well, speaking of Australians,
so quiet.
You remember the Saints?
Of course, I remember the Saints.
Because they're kind of regrouped. Whoever's left around has just regrouped, and they're doing things. And
I got to say that when the Saints got a record or two, 45 or so out before any of the British groups.
Yeah, I'm Stranded. It came out. Boom.
Stranded.
Yeah.
I bought that at Bleecker Bob's. And I remember that they did an album after that.
Yes.
That was really totally panned.
It was called Prehistoric Sounds or something like that. I think
maybe it's the record.
It had horns on it.
Yes.
And I loved it.
I loved it too. I remember Keith loving it too. We loved that record, man. And that gave us the inspiration to get a horn section together.
Yeah.
It was the Saints.
Yep.
Although, we had liked that sound in older records. And I was saying, when that record came out, it was totally panned in the Village Voice by Robert Christgau.
Yep.
He hated it because he said his rationale was that punk records shouldn't have horns.
Oh, no. Talk to X-Ray Specs about that.
Right. And we read that review, and it was like, this guy makes no sense.
Yeah.
Who's making rules,
That's the whole point.
he wasn't a fan of ours either, I must say, because we had a sax player at that point.
Right.
And I guess he didn't go for that.
Yeah, well.
His sister liked us.
Oh, okay.
So his family wasn't all that bad.
Right. Yeah. Well, I was in a band briefly called The Now, and we'd put out one single, and it was reviewed by Robert Christgau in the Village Voice. But I was the bass player, but because of the horns in the Saints and in X-Ray Specs, we tried to
that sounds familiar. The Now.
Yeah. We had a song called "I'm Eating Off a Fashion Plate."
Sounds familiar. I might actually have that 45.
Oh my God! I only pressed up 500 of them, so good on you.
Well, they have to go somewhere. I'm looking. You have quite a collection. Those are records behind you?
I hope so. Those are the 12 inches, and I got about 14,000 7-inches in the other room.
All right.
So
good.
They brought them all from the States.
You had to hire a ship.
Oh, it was a container, yeah.
A container, all right. Well, very good.
They got here okay. Didn't lose them one.
Marty looks good.
Thank you.
Looks good.
Yep.
I'm impressed.
See, another reason to come down.
Well, if you know of anyone that's doing a festival or something, I don't know.
I think we can
think of Tom. We are highly entertaining.
Okay.
And still make records.
If you enjoyed this episode of the 13th Floor's Music Talk series, please be sure to subscribe to the website or to the YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook or Instagram and wherever you find your podcasts. There's a whole lot more to discover.